Beloved brothers and sisters, today I want you to listen not only with your ears, but with your spirit. Many people come to the house of God faithfully. They sing the songs, they listen to the word, they say, Amen. And then, without realizing it, they walk out exactly the same way they came in. But I want to tell you this with great love and great urgency. The moment you leave the house of God is just as important as the moment you enter it. The church is not an ordinary place. When you step inside, you step into a realm where heaven and earth meet. Angels are present. The Word of God is alive. The Spirit of God is moving. And when you rise from your seat and begin to walk toward the door, heaven is still watching. God is still working. The spiritual world does not end at the exit. Many believers lose what they received because they leave carelessly. They leave distracted. They leave without gratitude, without awareness, without faith. But the Word teaches us that obedience, even in small things, releases great protection. What looks small to the human eye can be very big in the spiritual realm. There are gestures, simple, holy, faith-filled actions that express reverence, gratitude, and spiritual alertness. These are not empty rituals. They are expressions of faith. When you act in faith, God responds with power. When you honor His presence, He releases His protection. When you acknowledge Him, He walks with you beyond the church doors. Some people ask, can something so simple really make a difference? My answer is yes. Faith is not proven by how loud we speak, but by how obedient we live. The spiritual world responds to faith in action. A thankful heart becomes a shield. A reverent spirit becomes a wall of fire. A conscious act of faith becomes divine covering. Do not rush out of God's presence as if it were ordinary. Do not treat holy moments casually. What you do in those final moments can determine how you walk into the rest of your day, your week, even your future. God desires not only to bless you inside the church, but to preserve you outside of it. Today, I want to share with you something simple, something practical, yet something powerful. If you receive it with faith and practice it with sincerity, it will change the way you leave the house of God and how God goes with you when you do. The sacred power of awareness at the moment of leaving a holy place is something many people overlook, yet it carries deep spiritual meaning and lasting impact on a believer's daily life. When a person enters a place set apart for worship, they do not merely walk into a physical building, they step into an atmosphere shaped by faith, prayer, reverence, and the presence of the divine. In such a place, hearts are opened, burdens are lifted, and inner renewal quietly takes place. However, what happens in the final moments before leaving is often rushed, distracted, or treated as unimportant, even though those moments can determine whether what was received is preserved or slowly fades away. Awareness means recognizing where you are, what has taken place within you, and what you are carrying as you prepare to step back into the world. Many people are fully conscious when they enter a sacred space, but unconscious when they leave it. They arrive with expectation but depart with haste. Yet spiritually, departure is not a neutral act. It is a transition from a protected, focused environment into a world filled with noise, pressure, temptation, and uncertainty. Awareness at that moment acts like a bridge, allowing what was received in the sacred space to cross safely into everyday life. When a person leaves without awareness, the heart quickly shifts from gratitude to routine. The mind jumps ahead to plans, problems, and responsibilities, and the spirit is left behind. But awareness slows the soul. It reminds the heart that something holy has taken place. It allows a person to pause inwardly, to acknowledge that they are not leaving empty-handed but carrying something precious. This conscious recognition creates a sense of responsibility toward what has been received, nurturing it rather than neglecting it. Awareness also produces reverence. Reverence is not fear, but deep respect and honor. When someone is aware at the moment of leaving, they do not treat the sacred space as ordinary ground. They recognize that the atmosphere they are stepping out of has shaped them, even if they cannot explain how. This reverence becomes a form of protection because a heart that honors the sacred is less likely to treat life carelessly afterward. It shapes decisions, attitudes, and reactions long after the physical departure has taken place. Spiritually, awareness sharpens perception. A person who leaves consciously is more sensitive to their inner state. They notice peace, conviction, joy, or correction that may have settled in their heart. This sensitivity allows them to guard those inner movements. Without awareness, those subtle changes can be drowned out by external distractions within minutes. Awareness keeps the inner voice audible as one steps back into daily life. There is also power in awareness because it aligns the inner world with the outer action. Walking out of a sacred place is not just movement of the body, it is movement of the soul from one environment to another. Awareness ensures that the soul does not lag behind or become fragmented. It keeps the inner and outer life connected, creating spiritual wholeness rather than separation. A person who is aware carries the atmosphere with them, while a person who is unaware leaves it behind. Awareness at the moment of leaving also cultivates gratitude. Gratitude does not always require words. Sometimes it is simply a posture of the heart. A grateful heart recognizes that what has been received is a gift, not an entitlement. This gratitude acts like a seal, preserving the value of the experience. When gratitude is absent, familiarity and entitlement can quickly erode reverence. Awareness guards against this erosion by reminding the heart that every sacred encounter is meaningful. In addition, awareness strengthens faith through intentionality. Faith grows not only through dramatic moments, but through deliberate recognition of small ones. The act of being aware as one leaves reinforces the belief that spiritual encounters matter beyond the walls of a sacred place. It affirms that faith is not confined to a location, but accompanies the believer wherever they go. This awareness trains the heart to live faith as a continuous journey rather than a weekly event. There is also a protective dimension to awareness. Life outside a sacred space can be demanding and unpredictable. When a person leaves unconsciously, they are more vulnerable to immediate stress, irritation, or fear. Awareness acts like spiritual armor, reminding the heart that it has been strengthened, comforted, and guided. This remembrance stabilizes emotions and thoughts, making the individual less reactive and more grounded. Awareness also shapes memory. What we remember is often determined by how consciously we experience moments. Leaving with awareness allows the heart to remember what was sensed, learned, or stirred within. These memories become inner landmarks that guide future choices. Without awareness, even powerful moments can fade quickly, leaving only a vague impression rather than a transformative influence. Furthermore, awareness teaches discipline. Discipline is not rigid control, but trained attentiveness. When a person practices awareness at the moment of leaving, they develop a habit of mindfulness towards spiritual matters. Over time, this habit extends into other areas of life, influencing how they enter and leave conversations, decisions, relationships, and responsibilities. It nurtures a life lived with intention rather than impulse. Awareness also deepens humility. It reminds a person that they are not self-sustaining, but continually in need of guidance, renewal, and grace. This humility opens the heart to ongoing growth. A person who leaves a sacred space aware does not assume they are complete. They recognize they are being shaped step by step. This mindset keeps the heart teachable and receptive. Ultimately, the sacred power of awareness at the moment of leaving lies in its ability to extend the holy into the ordinary. It transforms a simple exit into a meaningful transition. It allows the influence of the sacred space to walk with the believer into their work, their home, their challenges, and their interactions. Awareness ensures that the sacred does not remain behind as a memory, but moves forward as a living influence, gently shaping the journey ahead, carrying light into ordinary paths, guarding the heart in unseen ways, and quietly sustaining the soul as it steps back into the rhythm of life. Small spiritual actions often appear insignificant to the human eye, yet they carry a depth of power that reaches far beyond what can be immediately seen or measured. In daily life, people are conditioned to value what is large, visible, and dramatic. They look for instant results and obvious transformations. However, the spiritual life operates by a different principle. What seems small in action can be great in effect, because spiritual power is not released by size, but by obedience, intention, and faith. A simple action, when performed with a sincere heart, can open doors that strength, intelligence, or effort alone cannot open. The reason small spiritual actions carry great consequences is because they align the human will with divine order. When a person chooses to act intentionally, even in a minor way, they are declaring that their life is not governed by chance or habit, but by purpose. This alignment creates harmony between the inner life and the unseen spiritual realm. The action itself may take only a few seconds, but the spiritual response to it can last far longer, shaping thoughts, attitudes, and circumstances in ways the person may not immediately recognize. Small actions also test the condition of the heart, because easy to obey when the action is impressive or publicly acknowledged, but true faith is revealed in quiet, unnoticed moments. A person who is faithful in small spiritual practices demonstrates humility and sincerity. This humility creates a posture that allows spiritual influence to flow freely. Pride resists subtlety, but humility embraces it, and through that openness, small acts become vessels of great impact. Another reason small spiritual actions matter is because they train the soul. Just as muscles grow through repeated small movements rather than a single extreme effort, the inner life is strengthened through consistent, simple practices. These actions build spiritual awareness and sensitivity over time. They create habits that shape character. A person who consistently practices small acts of faith develops a disciplined inner life that can withstand pressure, temptation, and uncertainty more effectively than someone who relies only on occasional dramatic experiences. Small actions also carry power because they invite intention into everyday moments. They remind the person that spiritual life is not separate from ordinary life, but woven into it. When faith is expressed in small gestures, it becomes integrated rather than compartmentalized. This integration transforms routine moments into meaningful ones. It brings sacred awareness into common activities, creating continuity between moments of worship and moments of work, rest, and interaction. There is also a protective dimension to small spiritual actions. Life often shifts suddenly, without warning. When a person has cultivated consistent, simple practices, their inner foundation is already established. They do not need to search for stability in moments of crisis, because it has already been built quietly over time. What was practiced in calm moments becomes strength in difficult ones. The protection does not come from the action itself, but from the spiritual posture it has formed within the person. Small spiritual actions also sharpen discernment. When someone pays attention to small things, they become more attentive overall. They learn to notice subtle inner movements, gentle warnings, quiet encouragement, and shifts in atmosphere. This discernment helps them make wiser decisions and avoid unnecessary harm. Without these small practices, life can become reactive rather than responsive, driven by impulse instead of insight. Another powerful aspect of small actions is that they express trust. Trust is not only spoken, it is demonstrated through behavior. When a person consistently acts in faith, even when the action seems minor, they are declaring confidence in the unseen. This trust invites a deeper sense of peace because the person is no longer trying to control everything through effort alone. They learn to cooperate rather than strive, to participate rather than force outcomes. Small actions also preserve what has been received. Moments of inspiration, clarity, or inner renewal are fragile if they are not cared for. A simple act performed afterward can serve as a seal, protecting that inner work from being quickly lost. Without such actions, spiritual experiences can remain emotional memories rather than lasting transformations. The small action becomes a bridge between experience and application, ensuring that what was received continues to influence life beyond the moment. In addition, small spiritual actions shape identity. Repeated behavior reinforces self-understanding. When a person regularly engages in intentional spiritual practices, even small ones, they begin to see themselves differently. They no longer view faith as an occasional activity, but as part of who they are. This identity influences choices, relationships, and priorities. It creates inner consistency where values and actions are aligned rather than conflicted. Small actions also carry generational impact. What one person practices consistently becomes visible to others, especially those who observe quietly. Children, colleagues, and companions often learn more from what is practiced than from what is spoken. Simple. Faithful actions communicate sincerity and stability. Over time, they influence environments and relationships, creating ripples that extend far beyond the original act. Furthermore, small spiritual actions honor process. Growth is rarely instant, and transformation is usually gradual. Small acts respect this reality. They acknowledge that meaningful change often happens incrementally. This perspective reduces frustration and discouragement, allowing a person to remain faithful even when progress feels slow. Patience grows, and with it, endurance. Ultimately, the greatness of small spiritual actions lies in their consistency and sincerity. They are accessible to everyone, regardless of status, strength, or knowledge. They do not require special conditions, only a willing heart. Over time, these actions accumulate, shaping a life that is stable, grounded, and deeply influenced by unseen truths. What begins as a simple gesture becomes a pattern. What becomes a pattern forms character, and what forms character determines direction, quietly guiding the course of life through steady, faithful movement. The unseen spiritual realm responding to human obedience is a reality that operates quietly yet powerfully alongside everyday life. While the physical world is governed by what can be seen, measured, and explained, the unseen realm responds to intentions, attitudes, and actions that align with deeper spiritual principles. Many people move through life unaware that their choices, even the smallest ones, send signals beyond what the natural senses can detect. Obedience, especially when it is sincere and intentional, creates a resonance that reaches into this unseen dimension and sets things into motion long before visible results appear. Obedience is not merely compliance, it is agreement. When a person obeys from the heart, they are aligning themselves with an order greater than their own understanding. This alignment is immediately recognized in the unseen realm, where motives carry more weight than appearances. The spiritual realm does not respond to performance or pretense, but to authenticity. A simple act done with genuine obedience can have greater impact than a grand gesture done for recognition. This is because the unseen realm responds to truth, and truth is expressed through sincere action. Many people struggle because they want visible confirmation before they obey. They want assurance, explanation, and evidence. However, the unseen realm operates on trust rather than proof. Obedience becomes the language through which trust is communicated. When someone acts without needing full understanding, they demonstrate confidence in what they cannot see. This confidence activates spiritual response. It is not forced or dramatic, but orderly and precise, like a mechanism responding to the correct signal. The unseen realm is highly sensitive to order and authority. Obedience acknowledges authority beyond the self. When a person obeys, they step out of self-rule and into alignment with a higher order. This shift is immediately recognized. Just as physical laws respond predictably when followed, spiritual laws respond when honored. The response may not be instant in visible form, but it begins immediately in ways that shape timing, protection, and direction. Obedience also creates access. Certain spiritual benefits are not accessed through knowledge or desire alone, but through action. Knowing what is right does not carry the same weight as doing what is right. The unseen realm responds to movement, not intention alone. When a person takes a step of obedience, even if it feels small or symbolic, it opens pathways that were previously closed. These pathways often lead to clarity, peace, and protection that cannot be achieved through reasoning alone. Another important aspect is that obedience carries humility, and humility is highly influential in the unseen realm. Humility acknowledges dependence rather than control. It recognizes that life is not fully managed by human strength or intelligence. This posture invites assistance that is otherwise resisted by pride. The unseen realm does not force itself upon those who insist on complete independence. It responds to those who make room through humility expressed in obedience. Obedience also establishes spiritual credibility. In the unseen realm, consistency matters. A person who obeys only when it is convenient sends mixed signals. But a person who obeys even in private, even when there is no immediate reward, establishes integrity. This integrity carries weight. It is recognized over time and creates stability in spiritual influence. Such a person becomes grounded, not easily shaken by circumstances, because their life is aligned rather than conflicted. There is also a protective response connected to obedience. Many dangers in life are not visible until they have already caused harm. Obedience often acts as a form of early guidance, redirecting a person away from unseen harm. The individual may never know what was avoided, but the unseen realm responds by arranging outcomes, delays, or changes that preserve well-being. What feels like a simple act of obedience may be the very thing that prevents unnecessary struggle or loss. Obedience trains sensitivity. The more a person responds to inner guidance through action, the more clearly they perceive it. The unseen realm communicates subtly, not forcefully. Those who ignore small promptings gradually become less aware, while those who act on them become more attuned. This sensitivity strengthens discernment, making life less reactive and more intentional. Decisions become guided rather than rushed, and peace replaces confusion. The unseen realm also responds to obedience with reinforcement. When a person obeys, they often experience inner confirmation such as peace, assurance, or clarity. These reinforcements are not rewards in a transactional sense, but affirmations that alignment has taken place. Over time, these experiences build confidence in following guidance. Even when outcomes are uncertain, life becomes less about control and more about cooperation. Obedience also multiplies impact beyond the individual. Actions taken in obedience influence environments, relationships, and future opportunities in ways that cannot be traced directly. The unseen realm works through connection, weaving individual acts into larger patterns. What one person does in quiet obedience can affect others indirectly, shaping circumstances and opening doors that benefit many. This interconnectedness reveals how obedience participates in a larger order that extends beyond personal gain. Furthermore, obedience anchors faith in reality. Faith that is never expressed through action remains theoretical. Obedience gives faith a physical form. It translates belief into movement. This translation is what the unseen realm responds to most strongly. It is not enough to agree internally. The act confirms the belief. This confirmation releases spiritual response because it demonstrates trust in action, not just thought. Ultimately, but the unseen spiritual realm responds to obedience because obedience reflects alignment, humility, trust, and sincerity. It is the language that bridges the visible and invisible. Through obedience, ordinary actions become meaningful signals, and simple gestures carry eternal weight. A life shaped by obedience becomes guided rather than driven, protected rather than exposed, and deeply rooted in a reality that extends beyond what the eyes can see, quietly supported, gently directed, and consistently upheld by forces that move in response to faithful action. Gratitude as a spiritual shield is a reality that operates quietly yet powerfully in the inner life of a person. But gratitude is often misunderstood as a simple emotional response to positive circumstances. But in its deeper sense, it is a posture of the heart that recognizes value, presence, and provision beyond what is immediately visible. When gratitude is practiced intentionally, it creates an inner environment that resists fear, bitterness, entitlement, and spiritual vulnerability. It does not deny challenges or pain, but it reframes them through awareness of what has already been given, sustained, and protected. A grateful heart is alert rather than careless. It acknowledges that life, strength, opportunity, and even moments of peace are not guaranteed, but received. This awareness cultivates humility, and humility strengthens the inner defenses of the soul. Pride leaves a person exposed because it assumes control, while gratitude acknowledges dependence and invites covering. In this way, gratitude becomes more than a feeling. It becomes a form of inner armor that guards the heart against unseen pressures and emotional erosion. Gratitude also protects the mind. A mind trained in gratitude is less easily overwhelmed by anxiety and negativity. When difficulties arise, the grateful mind does not immediately spiral into fear or complaint. Instead, it searches for stability in what remains constant. This shift in focus interrupts destructive thought patterns before they take root. Over time, gratitude builds mental resilience, allowing a person to respond rather than react. This mental stability serves as a shield, preventing external chaos from dominating the inner world. Spiritually, gratitude creates alignment. When a person expresses gratitude, they recognize order and purpose beyond themselves. This recognition positions the heart in harmony with spiritual reality. When a person expresses gratitude, they recognize order and purpose beyond themselves. This recognition positions the heart in harmony with spiritual reality. Harmony brings peace, and peace is a powerful form of protection. A peaceful heart is not easily manipulated by pressure, distraction, or temptation. Gratitude sustains this peace by continually reminding the soul that it is supported, guided, and not alone. Gratitude also preserves what has been received. Many inner blessings are subtle and can be easily lost through neglect or distraction. Gratitude acts like a seal, affirming that what has been received matters. When a person consciously gives thanks, they are acknowledging value, and value leads to care. This care protects inner growth from being trampled by haste or routine. Without gratitude, even meaningful experiences can fade quickly, leaving little lasting impact. Another protective aspect of gratitude is its ability to dissolve entitlement. Entitlement creates dissatisfaction and frustration, making the heart restless and vulnerable. A grateful heart, however, remains grounded. It understands that not everything is owed, and this understanding reduces inner conflict. Contentment grows where gratitude is present, and contentment guards against comparison, resentment, and disappointment. These emotional states, when left unchecked, can weaken the spirit and cloud judgment. Gratitude also influences behavior. A grateful person tends to move with greater care and intention. They are less reckless because they recognize the value of what they carry. This awareness affects choices, relationships, and responses. Gratitude encourages patience, kindness, and restraint. These qualities act as relational shields, protecting connections from unnecessary damage and preserving harmony in interactions with others. There is also a powerful connection between gratitude and awareness of presence. Gratitude keeps a person anchored in the present moment. Many spiritual vulnerabilities arise when the mind is consumed by regret about the past or fear about the future. Gratitude gently pulls the heart back into the now, where stability and clarity reside. This presence allows a person to notice subtle guidance, inner warnings, and quiet reassurance that might otherwise be missed. Gratitude strengthens trust. Trust grows when a person consistently acknowledges what has been provided rather than fixating on what is lacking. This trust reduces inner striving and tension. A trusting heart is less defensive because it does not feel the need to protect itself through control. Instead, it rests in confidence. This rest becomes a form of spiritual protection, shielding the heart from exhaustion and burnout. Gratitude also shapes perception. What a person repeatedly acknowledges begins to define how they see the world. A grateful person notices provision where others see scarcity. They recognize meaning where others see randomness. This perception influences emotional responses and decisions. Seeing through the lens of gratitude reduces vulnerability to despair and cynicism, which can slowly erode hope and purpose. In moments of transition, gratitude becomes especially powerful. Transitions can create uncertainty and emotional exposure. When a person carries gratitude into these moments, they remain grounded. Gratitude reminds them of continuity, that they are moving forward with something rather than leaving everything behind. This sense of continuity provides inner stability and courage, acting as a shield against fear of the unknown. Gratitude also deepens inner connection. When gratitude is expressed sincerely, it opens the heart rather than closing it. An open heart is not weak, it is receptive. This receptivity allows strength, guidance, and peace to flow freely. A closed heart, though it may feel protected, often becomes isolated and hardened. Gratitude keeps the heart soft without making it fragile, balanced without becoming passive. Ultimately, gratitude functions as a spiritual shield because it aligns the heart with truth, humility, awareness, and trust. It guards against internal enemies that cause far more damage than external circumstances. A grateful heart stands protected not by force, but by posture. It does not need to fight constantly because it remains rooted in recognition and appreciation. Through gratitude, the soul learns to stand steady, to remain peaceful amid change, and to walk forward covered by an unseen strength that quietly surrounds, sustains, and preserves the inner life in ways that cannot be easily shaken or broken. Reverence activating divine protection is a truth that unfolds quietly in the posture of the heart rather than in outward display. Reverence is not mere politeness, habit, or fear. It is a deep inner recognition of holiness, authority, and presence. When reverence is genuine, it reshapes how a person stands, listens, moves, and responds. It slows the soul, aligns the spirit, and creates an atmosphere where protection naturally flows. A reverent heart does not rush through sacred moments or treat them as ordinary, and because of this awareness, it becomes positioned under a covering that is not forced but willingly received. Reverence begins with recognition. When a person recognizes that they are in the presence of something greater than themselves, their inner posture changes. Self-centered urgency gives way to humility, and distraction yields to attentiveness. This recognition is powerful because it acknowledges order. Where order is honored, protection follows. Chaos thrives where reverence is absent, but peace settles where reverence is practiced. The heart that honors sacred presence does not expose itself carelessly, and this guarded posture becomes a shield in both visible and unseen ways. Reverence activates protection because it governs behavior. A reverent person moves with care. They speak with restraint, listen with intention, and act with consciousness. This careful movement reduces unnecessary harm and avoids many dangers that come from recklessness. Protection is not always dramatic or miraculous. Often it is quiet prevention. Reverence guides a person away from choices, words, and attitudes that would otherwise create vulnerability. In this sense, protection begins internally before it ever manifests externally. There is also a spiritual sensitivity that accompanies reverence. A reverent heart is more aware of inner promptings and gentle warnings. It does not dismiss subtle impressions or override them with haste. This sensitivity allows a person to respond early rather than recover later. Many troubles are not sudden. They begin with small signals that are ignored. Reverence keeps the heart alert, and this alertness serves as an early defense system, guiding a person away from unseen danger before it becomes visible. Reverence also establishes boundaries. A person who carries reverence understands that not everything is to be handled casually. This understanding creates healthy limits in thought, speech, and action. Boundaries are a form of protection. Without them, life becomes exposed and fragmented. Reverence strengthens these boundaries by reinforcing what is valuable and what is not to be treated lightly. When value is clearly recognized, it is guarded naturally. Another dimension of reverence is submission. Reverence submits without humiliation and honors without loss of dignity. This submission is not weakness, it is alignment. Alignment brings stability, and stability creates safety. When a person is aligned inwardly, they are less easily shaken by external pressure. They are not constantly reacting or defending themselves because their foundation is secure. This inner security functions as protection against emotional exhaustion, fear, and confusion. Reverence also disarms pride. Pride is one of the greatest sources of exposure because it convinces a person they are self-sufficient. Reverence counters this illusion by reminding the heart that it is sustained, guided, and watched over. This humility opens the way for protection that pride resists. A heart that bows inwardly is not crushed, it is covered. Reverence creates room for protection to operate without resistance. There is also a relational aspect to reverence. Reverence nurtures trust. When trust is present, the heart rests rather than strives. This rest is protective because it prevents burnout and desperation. A restless heart makes rushed decisions, while a reverent heart waits. Waiting is often an act of protection, preserving a person from moving too early or acting too quickly. Reverence teaches patience, and patience guards destiny. Reverence does not disappear when one leaves a sacred space. It travels with the person. When carried into daily life, it influences how one handles challenges, success, and responsibility. A reverent heart does not become arrogant in achievement or bitter in difficulty. This balance keeps the soul steady. Steadiness is protective because extremes often lead to collapse. Reverence maintains equilibrium, allowing a person to remain grounded regardless of circumstances. Reverence also strengthens awareness of presence beyond physical location. When a person lives with reverence, they do not feel abandoned when alone or overwhelmed in crowds. They carry an inner consciousness that they are not exposed or forgotten. This awareness produces courage without recklessness and confidence without arrogance. Such balance protects the heart from fear and despair, which can weaken judgment and invite harm. Protection activated by reverence is often unseen because it works through order rather than interruption. Doors quietly close. Delays appear at the right time. Encounters are avoided without explanation. Strength is renewed before it is depleted. These subtle forms of protection are often only recognized in hindsight. A reverent heart may never know how much it has been spared, but it lives with peace rather than regret. Reverence also preserves the sacred within the individual. When the inner life is honored, it is not easily corrupted by cynicism or carelessness. This preservation keeps the heart soft, but not fragile, open, but not exposed. Such balance is rare and powerful. A preserved inner life becomes a place of refuge in times of pressure, offering clarity when the outer world becomes noisy and demanding. Ultimately, reverence activates divine protection because it creates alignment, humility, awareness, and restraint. It positions the heart under covering rather than exposure. Reverence does not demand protection. It receives it naturally by honoring what is holy and valuable. A life shaped by reverence walks with quiet confidence, steady peace, and unseen defense, moving forward not in fear of harm, but in awareness of covering, sustained by an inner posture that continually invites guidance, stability, and protection through honor rather than force. Faith expressed through intentional gestures reveals the living nature of belief and transforms it from an internal conviction into a visible and active force. Faith is often spoken of as something held in the heart or mind, yet its true strength is demonstrated when it moves beyond thought and becomes embodied through action. Intentional gestures are not empty motions or symbolic habits, they are deliberate expressions of trust, alignment, and surrender. When a person chooses to act in faith with awareness, even in a small way, they give form to what they believe, allowing it to interact with life in a tangible and influential manner. Intentional gestures matter because faith is relational, not abstract. Belief that remains unexpressed can become passive, but belief that is acted upon becomes dynamic. An intentional gesture signals that faith is not merely an idea but a commitment. It declares that the person is willing to move, respond, and participate rather than remain a silent observer. This movement creates momentum in the inner life, breaking stagnation and reinforcing conviction. Faith grows stronger when it is exercised, just as confidence grows when it is practiced rather than contemplated. The power of intentional gestures lies in their consciousness. An action done without awareness may become routine, but an action done with intention carries meaning. When a person performs a gesture knowingly, they are engaging both heart and will. This engagement aligns the inner and outer life, creating integrity. Integrity strengthens faith because it removes inner conflict. What is believed internally is confirmed externally, and this confirmation deepens trust and clarity within the individual. Intentional gestures also anchor faith in the present moment. Faith can easily drift into memory or anticipation, becoming focused on what once was or what might be. When faith is expressed through action now, it becomes grounded. This grounding stabilizes the heart, preventing faith from becoming distant or theoretical. The present expression of faith brings immediacy, reminding the person that belief is not only about outcomes, but about relationship and response in the moment. There is also courage involved in intentional gestures. Acting in faith often requires stepping beyond comfort or predictability. Even simple gestures can feel vulnerable because they expose belief to reality. This vulnerability is not weakness, it is bravery. It demonstrates trust without guarantee. Each intentional act strengthens courage, teaching the heart that it is safe to trust even when certainty is incomplete. Over time, this courage becomes part of the person's character. Intentional gestures train attentiveness. A person who practices faith through action becomes more aware of opportunities to respond. They begin to notice moments where belief can be expressed rather than merely affirmed. This attentiveness heightens spiritual sensitivity, making life feel guided rather than random. The person becomes less reactive and more responsive, recognizing that faith invites participation rather than passivity. These gestures also serve as reminders. Human memory is fragile, and intentions can fade quickly amid distractions. An intentional gesture brings belief back into focus. It reminds the heart of what it values and trusts. This reminder strengthens consistency, helping faith remain active even during routine or pressure-filled moments. Without such reminders, faith can become overshadowed by immediate concerns. Another important aspect of intentional gestures is their ability to unify thought, emotion, and action. Often, people believe one thing, feel another, and act in a third direction. This fragmentation weakens faith and creates inner tension. When a gesture is performed intentionally, it brings these aspects together. Thought affirms belief, emotion engages sincerity, and action completes the expression. This unity creates inner peace and reinforces confidence. Intentional gestures also communicate faith beyond the individual. While faith is personal, it is never isolated. Actions are visible, and even quiet gestures can influence others. They communicate sincerity without words. Such actions often invite reflection rather than pressure. They create an atmosphere where belief feels lived rather than imposed. This quiet influence can inspire curiosity, respect, and even encouragement in those who observe. Faith expressed through intentional gestures also protects against complacency. When belief is never acted upon, it can become dull or habitual. Intentional action keeps faith alive and alert. It prevents the heart from drifting into routine or indifference. Each act of faith renews awareness and reinforces purpose, keeping belief vibrant and engaged rather than stagnant. There is also a strengthening effect that comes from repetition. Intentional gestures practiced consistently form habits that shape identity. Over time, the person no longer struggles to act in faith because it becomes natural. These habits build resilience, allowing faith to remain steady during difficulty. What begins as a deliberate act eventually becomes a reflex of trust. Intentional gestures also acknowledge dependence. Acting in faith admits that not everything is controlled by effort or understanding. This admission releases the burden of self-reliance and invites peace. A person who acts in faith is no longer trying to carry everything alone. This surrender creates emotional and spiritual relief, protecting the heart from exhaustion and frustration. Faith expressed through intentional gestures honors the reality that belief is meant to be lived. It bridges the gap between inner conviction and outward life. Through these gestures, faith steps into motion, shaping attitudes, decisions, and direction. They turn belief into participation and conviction into experience. A life marked by such expressions becomes coherent, grounded, and quietly powerful, carrying faith not as an abstract concept, but as a lived posture that continues to shape the journey with purpose, awareness, and trust. The understanding that divine presence extends beyond the walls of a sacred space reshapes how a person views both worship and daily life. Many people unconsciously limit sacred awareness to specific locations, believing that holiness is confined to a building, a gathering, or a particular moment. Yet the deeper reality is that sacred presence does not remain behind when one steps outside. It moves with the believer, surrounding, guiding, and sustaining them in ordinary environments just as powerfully as in moments of worship. When this truth becomes rooted in the heart, life itself becomes an extension of devotion rather than a separation from it. The transition from a sacred space into everyday surroundings is not an exit from presence, but a continuation of it. When a person understands this, their mindset shifts. They no longer feel spiritually strong only in certain places and spiritually vulnerable elsewhere. Instead, they carry an inner awareness that presence accompanies them into their home, workplace, conversations, and challenges. This awareness provides stability because it removes the false divide between sacred moments and secular responsibilities. This extending presence brings reassurance. Life outside a sacred gathering can feel demanding, unpredictable, and overwhelming. When a person believes they are stepping out alone, fear and anxiety gain ground. But when they are conscious that presence walks with them, fear loses its grip. This companionship becomes a source of quiet confidence, reminding the heart that it is not exposed or unsupported. Even in unfamiliar or difficult situations, this awareness offers peace that does not depend on circumstances. The extension of presence also transforms behavior. When a person believes that sacred awareness travels with them, their choices become more intentional. They speak with greater care, act with more integrity, and respond with patience rather than impulse. This is not driven by pressure or performance, but by relationship. Actions become expressions of awareness rather than obligations. Life is lived with mindfulness, not because of rules, but because of connection. This continuous presence also reshapes identity. A person no longer sees themselves as someone who visits sacredness occasionally, but as someone who carries it. This identity brings dignity and responsibility. It encourages the heart to live consistently, aligning private actions with public faith. Consistency strengthens character, and character provides resilience. A person who lives with this awareness is less fragmented, less conflicted, and more grounded. There is also protection in this awareness. When a person knows they are accompanied, they are more attentive to inner guidance. Subtle warnings are noticed. Gentle redirections are respected. Many harmful situations are avoided not through dramatic intervention, but through quiet guidance that steers the person away before danger appears. This protection often goes unnoticed, yet it shapes outcomes in profound ways. The extending presence also brings comfort in solitude. Many struggles occur not in crowds, but in moments of isolation. When a person believes presence is tied to place, solitude can feel empty or threatening. But when they understand presence is constant, solitude becomes a place of rest rather than loneliness. Inner strength grows in these moments as the heart learns to remain steady without external reassurance. This awareness also deepens trust. Trust grows when a person experiences continuity rather than interruption. When presence is believed to be constant, faith is no longer dependent on emotional highs or specific environments. It becomes steady. This steadiness reduces spiritual exhaustion because the person no longer feels the need to constantly recreate intense experiences to feel connected. Connection is understood as ongoing rather than episodic. The extending presence also influences how a person handles failure and weakness. When mistakes occur outside sacred spaces, shame often convinces people they have stepped out of reach. But awareness of constant presence challenges this lie. It reassures the heart that guidance and restoration are still available. This prevents despair and encourages honest reflection rather than withdrawal. Growth becomes possible because the person does not feel abandoned in moments of imperfection. Daily routines are also transformed by this understanding. Ordinary tasks take on new meaning. Work becomes an expression of faithfulness. Conversations become opportunities for grace. Even challenges become moments where presence can be experienced in strength and wisdom. Life is no longer divided into meaningful and meaningless parts. Everything becomes connected through awareness. This extending presence also fosters gratitude. When a person recognizes presence in daily life, they begin to notice provision and care in small details. Gratitude grows not only for dramatic moments, but for quiet support. This gratitude sustains joy and guards against bitterness. A grateful heart is more resilient, more hopeful, and more open to guidance. The awareness of presence beyond walls also strengthens courage. Fear often arises from the belief that one must face challenges alone. When presence is understood as constant, courage becomes more natural. Decisions are made with confidence rather than hesitation. Risks are taken wisely rather than avoided out of fear. Courage does not remove difficulty, but it removes paralysis. This truth also reshapes how a person returns to sacred spaces. Instead of arriving empty and desperate, they arrive with stories of lived experience. Worship becomes richer because it flows from a life already aware of presence. Sacred gatherings are no longer escapes from life, but moments of renewal within it. This creates balance, preventing both spiritual escapism and spiritual dryness. Ultimately, the understanding that presence extends beyond the walls transforms faith into a way of living rather than a scheduled activity. It brings continuity, stability, and peace. The believer walks through life with an inner awareness that they are accompanied, guided, and sustained in every environment. Sacred presence is no longer confined to a place, but carried in the heart, shaping thoughts, choices, and responses as life unfolds, quietly surrounding each step with assurance, strength, and companionship that does not fade when doors close or routines begin. The difference between routine religion And living faith lies not in outward appearance, but in inner vitality and intentional engagement. Routine religion is often built on repetition without reflection, habit without awareness, and participation without transformation. It can look faithful on the surface, yet remain disconnected from the heart. Living faith, on the other hand, is active, conscious, and responsive. It is not confined to schedules or settings, but flows through the whole of life, shaping thoughts, decisions, and relationships with quiet consistency and purpose.